We have many great generals who have gone before us, generals of faith. And one of those generals is Gwen Shaw. She is the founder of End Time Handmaidens and a wonderful woman of God, missionary for many years, and shares some of the most outstanding testimonies of things that Jesus has done. You know, any one of you can be a person filled with faith who does exploits for God. If your heart is completely His eyes are roaming around the earth looking for you. His eyes move to and fro throughout the earth looking for hearts that are completely His so He can what? Do great exploits on their behalf. Gwen Shaw is a woman who has seen God do many exploits. India is one of my favorite nations. I pray for India a lot, and I just have a love for India. And God is moving in that nation. In fact, it's Asia's hour right now, but I particularly see God's eye on India. You're about ready to hear an outstanding testimony of what God did for a Hindu holy man who is now serving Jesus because of a great encounter. Here's Gwen Shaw now.
There was a Hindu holy man who had become a Christian holy man, and I wanted to give him 5 rupees. That's like $5 in their money. And because he was coming to the convention that I was ministering at, and I saw he felt he had a need. So I said, I want to give you a little blessing, brother. It's not much money, you know, maybe it's about the equivalent of a dollar bill. And he said, no, thank you. He says, I cannot accept. So I asked the pastor, and this was in Agra where the Taj Mahal is, the beautiful, most beautiful building in the world. I asked the pastor, I said, tell me, why didn't that sadhu, why didn't he accept my gift of love offering I was going to give him? Oh, he said he never touches money. He refuses to touch it. I said, well, how does he travel about and how does he eat? He travels only when people put a ticket in his hand. And he eats only what people give him to eat. He does not beg, and he will not accept money. He does not buy anything. He uses only what is given to him. And I said, well, tell me about his salvation. He said, well, it's very, very interesting. He said, you know, he was a disciple in a Hindu ashram. That's like a school, a place of prayer where they seek for God. And he said as he was a disciple there, praying and doing penance in the temple, he heard a voice speaking to him in a language he didn't understand. And he thought, is there somebody here? I thought I was alone. And he gets up and looks around and there's no one there. So he goes back to prayer. He says, well, I maybe just fell asleep and was dreaming. And he hears this voice again speaking in a strange language. And he said, that is a voice. And he gets up and looks around, looks everywhere, lifts curtains and looks under tables and everywhere. He can't find anybody. 3rd time he's in prayer and he hears the voice again. By now he's full of fear because he knows it's something invisible. Someone invisible is speaking to him. But he doesn't know what he's saying. He can't understand the language. So he goes to his guru and he tells his guru, he said, a strange thing happened to me as I was in prayer. He said, I was praying, and he said, suddenly, he said, I heard this voice, but it was in a language I don't understand. And he said, it spoke 3 times. And the guru said, well, what did it say? He said, well, I don't know, I can't understand, but well, can you repeat the words? Do you know what it sounded like? He said, yes, I can repeat. And the voice said, I am Jesus, I am God, worship me. He said, what does that mean? To him it was another language. He said, well, Jesus is the true God. He said, he is? Well, why haven't you taught us this? He said, because you would have killed me. All of you would have killed me. He said, I cannot teach you that, but that's true. He is the true God. Even the Guru believed it in his heart. And he said to him, he said, what am I supposed to do? He said, well, tell nobody, because you just turn this, they'll kill you. He said, you must go and search for this Jesus. You must look for him. And so he started wandering, began a life of wandering. And he looked everywhere for Jesus. Do you know where Jesus lives? I'm looking for Jesus. Can anybody tell me where Jesus is? And then he came finally to Agra, and he's walking down the streets. And he comes to the church pastored by brother Pastor George. And he says, there is a sign on the gate. It says, Church of Jesus Christ. He said, this is the church where Jesus is. And so, of course, it's in his language. So he says, I found him. So he knocks on the door, and Brother Pastor George comes to the door and says, yes, what can I do for you? He's dressed in this saffron robe. And he says, I'm looking for Jesus. Does he live here? He said, yes, he does. Come right in. He said, I will introduce you to him. So he became a believer in Jesus Christ and went everywhere teaching other Hindus about Jesus. And there are believers, many of them in secret, among the Muslims. Many, many have accepted Jesus, but they don't dare tell it. I've had a woman and her husband come to our meetings in our house where we've had fellowship together in Jerusalem. And my husband said, my wife is a Christian. She follows Jesus. But I said, well, why don't you tell people? He said they would kill her, and I tell her not to tell anyone. I won't kill her because I love her. But we are Muslim, and our family is Muslim, and they would put her to death. He said, and I don't want that to happen. So loved ones who love their dear ones can keep it in secret. They are like Esther was in the house of Ahasuerus. They have to keep their identity for a time. But I understand that there are millions in India that are ready to turn to Christ openly. They don't want any more of their religion, and even they don't believe in it anymore. They know their Hindu gods don't answer their prayers. So this is the end time harvest. This is the time when anybody who knows how to talk about Jesus should be out there telling it to them about Jesus, because they're waiting for the harvesters of the end time to bring in the last harvest. The world is waiting. There are millions and millions and millions and multitudes in the Valley of Decision in these days. It's a wonderful time to be a missionary.